We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Have you ever replayed the same conversation dozens of times, searching for the one sentence you wish you had said differently? Maybe someone looked at you in a strange way, and hours later, you were still wondering whether they were upset with you. Perhaps you've delayed making an important decision because every possible outcome felt equally dangerous. You tell yourself that you're simply being careful, that you're analyzing the situation, that you're trying to make the best possible choice. But what if that's not what's actually happening? What if your mind isn't searching for answers? What if it's searching for certainty? And what if certainty is the one thing life can never truly offer? Overthinking is often misunderstood. Many people see it as a sign of intelligence. They believe that if they think long enough, analyze deeply enough, or prepare for every possible outcome, they will eventually eliminate uncertainty. But the strange thing about overthinking is that it almost never produces clarity. Instead, it produces exhaustion. The more you think, the more possibilities appear. The more possibilities appear, the more anxious you become. Eventually, your own mind becomes a maze with no exit. The question isn't why you think so much. The real question is why your brain believes that thinking will keep you safe. That question changes everything. Psychologists often distinguish between reflection and rumination. Reflection moves you toward understanding. Rumination keeps you trapped in circles. Reflection ends with a decision. Rumination convinces you that one more thought will finally solve the problem. It rarely does. Instead, it creates the comforting illusion that as long as you're thinking, you're still in control. But control is exactly what your brain is trying to protect. Our nervous system is designed to predict danger before it happens. Every uncertain situation forces the brain to make a choice. Should I act? Should I wait? Should I trust this person? Should I speak? Should I stay silent? When the brain cannot predict the outcome, it often chooses one final strategy. It keeps thinking. Thinking becomes a substitute for certainty. The tragedy is that uncertainty doesn't disappear simply because you've spent another 3 hours analyzing it. In fact, excessive thinking often makes uncertainty feel even larger than it really is. So why does the brain keep doing something that clearly isn't working? The answer may have far less to do with the present than with the past. The roots of overthinking often reach much deeper than we realize. Most people assume they think too much because they are anxious. In reality, anxiety is often the result, not the cause. Imagine growing up in a home where emotions were unpredictable. One day your parents were warm and affectionate. The next day they were distant, angry, or emotionally unavailable. As a child, you had no power to change their behavior. But your brain did something remarkable. It began searching for patterns. You learned to pay attention to every facial expression, every sigh, every change in tone of voice. Before speaking, you would ask yourself, is this the right moment? Before expressing your feelings, you would wonder, will this make things worse? Your mind became a survival tool, constantly scanning for danger before it appeared. At the time, this strategy worked. It protected you. The problem is that your nervous system doesn't automatically recognize that your childhood is over. Years later, the same survival strategy appears in completely different situations. A delayed text message feels like rejection. Silence feels like conflict. A small mistake at work feels like the beginning of disaster. Your brain is no longer reacting to the present moment. It's reacting to memories that were never fully processed. Carl Jung believed that much of our behavior is guided by unconscious patterns formed long before we become aware of them. He argued that until we make the unconscious conscious, it continues directing our lives while we call it fate. Overthinking is often one of those unconscious patterns. You don't overthink because you enjoy worrying. You overthink because some part of you believes that if you can predict everything, nothing can hurt you again. This is where Jung's idea of the persona becomes important. The persona is the version of ourselves we create to gain acceptance, avoid rejection, and survive socially. If, as a child, you learned that making mistakes led to criticism, your persona may become someone who always has the perfect answer. Someone who checks every email 5 times before sending it. Someone who rehearses conversations in their head before making a phone call. Someone who believes that being prepared is the only way to be safe. From the outside, this person looks responsible and thoughtful. Inside, however, they are exhausted. Because perfection is an impossible standard, the mind never feels finished. There is always one more possibility to consider, one more scenario to prepare for, one more mistake to prevent. The cruel irony is that the more you chase certainty, the more uncertain you become. Overthinking promises safety, but it quietly steals your peace. If overthinking is an attempt to control uncertainty, then the solution is not to think harder. The solution is to change your relationship with uncertainty itself. This is where psychology and Stoicism meet in a surprisingly powerful way. More than 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus wrote that we suffer not because of events themselves, but because of our judgments about them. While modern psychology explains the mechanisms inside the brain, Stoicism reminds us of something equally important. There is a limit to what we can control. Overthinkers often live as if every outcome depends entirely on them. If a relationship fails, they search for the exact moment they made a mistake. If someone becomes distant, they replay every conversation looking for hidden meaning. If an opportunity disappears, they convince themselves that one different decision could have changed everything. But life doesn't work that way. No amount of thinking can guarantee that people will understand you. No amount of planning can eliminate disappointment. And no amount of worrying can prevent the future from being uncertain. Carl Jung believed that psychological growth begins when we stop running from the parts of life we cannot control. The more we fight uncertainty, the stronger it becomes. The more we try to eliminate fear, the more space it occupies in our minds. Real freedom begins when you stop asking, "How can I make sure nothing goes wrong?" and start asking, "Can I handle whatever happens?" That single shift changes everything. Because confidence is not the belief that life will always go according to plan. Confidence is trusting yourself even when it doesn't. The next time you catch yourself replaying a conversation or imagining endless worst-case scenarios, pause for a moment and ask yourself one simple question. Am I solving a real problem? Or am I trying to escape uncertainty? That question interrupts the automatic cycle. Then ask yourself another. What evidence do I actually have? Not what you fear, not what you imagine. What do you truly know? Most of the time, you'll discover that your mind has been filling empty spaces with stories rather than facts. And finally, remind yourself of something your anxious mind constantly forgets. You have survived uncertainty before. Every difficult conversation, every unexpected change, every disappointment, every mistake. You survived them all, not because you predicted them perfectly, but because you were stronger than you believed. Perhaps that is the greatest illusion of overthinking. It convinces you that peace will come after one more thought, one more analysis, one more attempt to predict the future. But peace doesn't begin when uncertainty disappears. Peace begins when you no longer need uncertainty to disappear. If this video helped you understand your own mind a little better, consider subscribing to Architecture of Emotions. Every week, we explore psychology, Carl Jung, philosophy, and the hidden emotional patterns that shape our lives. And before you leave, I'd like to ask you one question. What is one thought your mind keeps replaying, even though you know it has no answer? Sometimes the first step toward healing is realizing you're not the only one asking it.